Hey, what? What are you doing? I'm reviewing a movie. What do you think I'm doing? I don't think that badly dancing around the room really counts as a movie review. Shut up, dude. It's art. Let's go. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2018 film Climax. As always, this review is going to be spoiler free. If you like what you see, feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Climax follows a diverse group of professional dancers who hole up in an abandoned elementary school on a wintry night to rehearse and socialize. But 45 minutes into the movie, they realize that their punch bowl has been laced with LSD. And before long, the group is completely losing their minds in nightmarish fashion. The reviews on this channel are spoiler free, but honestly, it's kind of hard to spoil this movie because there isn't really much plot there to spoil. If you look up any basic plot summary, plot synopsis online, you're basically going to get everything that this movie has to offer plot-wise. The only real surprise in terms of the story comes at the very end of the movie, and I'll admit, it is kind of a surprise. It did kind of get me. But other than that, this isn't really a movie about plot, which is much to my disappointment because I am a big fan of stories and storytelling, and that really isn't the focus of this movie. Before I get into this review, I'm going to give a few compliments to the movie. To start, the concept of the movie is really kind of freaky and is ripe for some really good ideas and a really good movie. And it is cool for about 5 minutes or so. The other compliment I have is that the dance scenes are pretty cool and pretty well choreographed. Although, once again, they go on for way too long, and so for about 5 minutes, it's interesting, it's cool watching these professional dancers do what they do best. But they very quickly get old, and the movie shows no signs of wanting to move on from these scenes. They just kind of drag on and on for really long stretches of time. Alright, now let's get into the review. This movie is unforgivably awful. From the very beginning, it was testing my patience with this interview scene that lasts for over 10 minutes, where basically we're getting introduced to each of the characters in the movie. And this is one of the worst cast of characters that I've ever seen in any movie. I hate every single one of these characters. There are a few scenes in the movie where a few of the characters are made a little bit mildly sympathetic. I guess the little kid, I feel sympathy for because he's basically a victim of all of these horrible adults. But other than the little kid in this movie, I hate just about every other character here. In case you're not aware, this is a capital A art movie, which means that nothing can just be done normal, nothing can just be done in the tried and true way. Everything has to be subverted and progressive, which means that every scene in the movie outstays its welcome for somewhere in the range of 5 to sometimes even 30 minutes. These scenes and these sequences in the movie go on for way too long, and a lot of times they're simply repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Nothing is really happening. It's just a bunch of characters doing basically the same thing, except, like, the director doesn't seem to realize this, and so he just keeps doing it over and over and over again. The movie's basically split into two halves. The first half being more of, like, the characters, the interview scene, the characters getting introduced, the dance sequences, the socializing sequences, and then the second half goes more into the horror side of things where they discover that the punch bowl has been laced. And honestly, I don't know which half of the movie I hate more. Both halves are abysmally bad. In the first half, we get my personal favorite scene in the movie, and by favorite, I mean it makes me want to claw my eyeballs out of my face and drive ice picks into my ears. And by scene, I mean an extended sequence that drags on and on and on indefinitely. In the scene, the characters do their equivalent of socializing, but because they are a bunch of complete degenerates, that basically just involves them swearing a lot and talking in very graphic detail about sex, which appears to be basically the only topic other than dancing that these characters care about in the entire world. Seriously, there's a scene here that is basically just like one take, and it goes on for like 5 minutes where these two men are just standing and talking in extremely graphic detail about the sexual things which they wish to do to the other members of the group. I don't know if I'm intended to be disgusted by these characters or if the director is literally just such a filthy lowlife that this is the kind of language and behavior that's just normal to him. Either way, at a certain point, I just turned my phone on and just ignored the subtitles because I didn't even want to know what these characters were saying. The movie, like I mentioned, is split in half, and in the second half of the movie, we get into more of the horror stuff, which is kind of interesting, kind of creepy, until you realize that, oh, this is literally just going to be the entire rest of the movie, is just this exact same thing done over and over and over and over again, and the same point basically just being driven into the ground for like 45 minutes straight. Yeah, at a certain point, this movie was just unbearable. It's like when you have a headache and all you want to do is just sit and just tune out the entire world and you're just like sick of everything. That's the feeling that this movie gives me, especially in the second half. It feels like just a pounding headache that I just want to be over. I just want the Advil to kick in already and make this horrible pain go away because it is miserable and I don't like to suffer. I also want to talk about the violence in the second half of this movie. Coming into the movie, I had heard some things like that this movie was like a real shocker. So I was ramped up. I was prepared for like some Martyrs level of brutality, but that actually did not end up turning out to be the case. I feel like there's one scene in particular in the movie that people think of when they talk about like the shocking violence and stuff. But even that scene is not really all that bad. The violence is not really in and of itself all that bad. I think it's just that the violence in this movie is just so pointless. It serves no purpose for the greater story or anything, so it makes it feel worse than it actually is. I gotta say, director Gaspar Noé is really phoning it in here. I mean, there isn't like a graphic 5-minute long rape scene in this movie, so I mean, come on, man, do better. The last thing I want to talk about is just how utterly pointless this movie is. Like I hinted at earlier, it's not entertaining, it's not scary or disturbing, it has nothing to say, it has nothing to add to the world, nothing to add to the human conversation in any way, shape, or form. It's not really doing anything all that innovative. I mean, by the end of the movie, the camera is going all over the place, flipping upside down, doing all this crazy stuff, but none of it feels at all innovative or interesting. It just feels like the same kind of crap that pretentious art house directors have been doing for years at this point. And story-wise, it's utterly empty. It's just a bunch of degenerate characters acting completely stupid and depraved and degenerate for an hour and a half. This thing is a black hole of meaning, joy, and just good storytelling, good filmmaking. Yeah, all I have left to say is, what an awful movie. In my opinion, it's a 1 out of 10.